So this is chapter 10 overview, and we are going to talk about consumer behavior. So consumer choice and behavioral economics. So the utility and consumer decision making, where demand curves come from, social influences, and behavioral economics. Do people really make rational choices? We will not be covering the appendix. So, consumer decision making. In our study of consumers so far, we have looked at what they do, but not why they do what they do. So that's what behavioral economics is. Remember, economics is all about the choices that people make. A better understanding of the choices furthers our understanding of economic behavior. At the same time, we need to know the limits of our understanding. This chapter will examine what we know and what we can't explain about how consumers behave. So let's define utility and explain how consumers choose goods and services to maximize their utility. At a starting point, remember, if you were in Economics 1, we talked about the consumers and that we assume that they are rational. And so economists assume that consumers are rational, which means they make choices intended to make themselves as well off as possible. We examine these choices when consumers make their decision about how much of various items to buy given their scarce resources. Remember, we have unlimited wants and limited resources. So therefore, we are always weighing the cost benefit, and we will do something all the way up to where MC equals MB. Marginal cost equals marginal benefit. Anytime the cost outweighs the benefit, we would stop doing that action if we were rational. So facing this budget constraint, how do people choose? A budget constraint is the limited amount of income available for consumers to spend on goods and services. So in this point, we have to try to measure happiness, which is a difficult thing, but economists refer to the enjoyment or satisfaction that people obtain by consuming goods and services as utility. So this is our happiness measurement. You cannot be directly measured. Utility cannot be directly measured. But for now, suppose that we could. What would you see? As people consumed more of an item, say pizza, their total utility would change. The amount by which it would change when consuming it, an extra unit, would be called of a good or service is marginal utility. So utility is our overall happiness or satisfaction. Marginal utility is what we get from consuming the difference between one slice of pizza and two. Generally, we expect to see the first items consumed produce the most marginal utility. Subsequently, items give so that subsequent items gave the diminishing marginal utility. So the law of diminishing marginal utility is the principle that consumers experience diminishing additional satisfaction as they consume more and more of a good or service during a given time. So I like to think about this. When you're extremely hungry and you go eat a slice of pizza, that first slice of pizza, assuming you like pizza, is very satisfying. So your marginal utility from that first one is much higher than the second one. But the second one is still good. By the time you eat your 8th slice of pizza, it's the law of diminishing marginal utility, and you potentially feel sick, and it's negative. So this table shows total utility you might derive from eating pizza on Super Bowl Sunday. The numbers in utils represent your happiness. Higher is better. So 1 slice of pizza, here, and then 2 slices of pizza, 3 slices, 4, 5. At 5, we start to go down. Our total utility actually goes down because, again, we might start to feel sick. So the increase in utility from one slice to the next is the marginal utility. So from here to here. So from 0 to 1, this is our marginal utility, and then a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, and that's the law of diminishing marginal utility. So here's what we got 20 utils, or marginal utility, and then it keeps going down as we eat pizza, and it's actually negative because once we eat the 6th slice, we feel sick. So allocating your resources. Given an unlimited amount of resources, a consumer would consume every good and service up until their maximum total utility. But since resources are scarce, consumers have a budget constraint. The concept of utility can help us focus to figure out how much of each item we should purchase. Each item purchased gives some possibly negative marginal utility by dividing the price of the item we obtain by the marginal utility per dollar spent. That is, the rate at which the item allows the consumer to transfer money into happiness, or utility. Suppose you can now obtain utility by eating pizza and drinking Coke. This table gives you the marginal utility derived from each activity. At 0 slices of pizza, we get 0, and our marginal utility is 0. Same thing. For 1 slice of pizza, we get 20 total utilities from eating the pizza, and 1 cup of Coke is 20. At 2 slices of pizza, we get 36, but the marginal utility is the difference between 20 and 36, so 16. At 2 cups of Coke, we get 35, so it was 20 here and 15, and so on until at 6 cups of pizza and 6 slices of pizza and 6 cups of Coke, we have negative marginal utility. Now suppose that pizza costs $2 a slice and Coke costs $1 per cup. The marginal utility per dollar is just the marginal utility divided by 2. For Coke, it's divided by 1. So, for 1 slice of pizza, we get 10 per dollar. For 1 cup of Coke, we get 20 per dollar. Suppose the marginal utility per dollar obtained by pizza was greater than that obtained by Coke. Then you should eat more pizza and drink less Coke. This implies the rule of equal marginal utility per dollar spent. Consumers should seek to equalize their bang for their buck. I think about this like if we go shop at, per se, Rack Room Shoes, you can get Nikes still, but you can get second pair 50% off or something like that. So we're trying to get our biggest bang for the buck. So some combination satisfying this rule. So 1 slice of pizza and 3 cups of Coke, total utility $65. 3 slices of pizza and 4 cups of Coke, total utility $60. Total utility $96, but you spent $10. So, with $5 spent, you would purchase 1 slice of pizza and 3 cups of Coke. If you want to spend $10, you would purchase 3 slices of pizza and 4 cups of Coke. In each case, you exhaust your total budget, since spending additional money gives you more utility. This gives us 2 conditions for maximizing utility, satisfying the rule of equal marginal utility for dollar spent, MU, marginal utility pizza, divided by pizza equals marginal utility of Coke divided by Coke. So spending on pizza plus spending on Coke equals our total available amount of our budget. If the pizza changes from $1.50, then the rule of marginal equal utility per dollar spent will no longer be satisfied. You must adjust your purchasing decision. We can think of this adjustment in 2 ways. You can afford more than before. This is like having higher income. Or the pizza has become cheaper relative to Coke. We refer to the effect from number 1 as the income effect. So more income. And number 2 as the substitution effect. Pizza is cheaper relative to Coke. The income effect of a price change refers to the change in the quantity demanded of a good that results from the effect of the change in the price on consumers' purchasing power, holding all other things constant. So this is the effect of having more income. We know that some goods are normal goods, as we reviewed in Chapter 3, and a normal good is a good that we consume more of as our income rises. And some are inferior goods. That means we'll consume less of it, ramen noodles, as our income rises. If pizza is a normal good, the income effect of its price decrease will cause you to consume more pizza. If it's an inferior good, it would cause us to consume less pizza. The substitution effect is the price change that refers to the change in quantity demanded of a good that results from a price change making the good more or less expensive relative to other goods, holding everything else constant, the effect of the price change on consumer purchasing power. To isolate the substitution effect, we can think of your income decreasing, so you can just afford your previous combination. You had $10 before. You bought 3 slices of pizza and 4 cups of Coke. If pizza costs $1.50, $8.50 would allow you to purchase the same amount. But this would no longer maximize your utility, since the rule of equal marginal utility per dollar spent is not satisfied. To restore equality, consumption of pizza should rise, decreasing the marginal utility of pizza, or consumption of Coke should fall, increasing the marginal utility of pizza. Consumption of pizza rising is the substitution effect. as possible, a new combination of items in 4 slices of pizza and 4 cups of Coke, costing $10. So 4 and 4. The marginal utility per dollar is not quite equal, but it's as close as we can get without allowing for fractional goods. So here's a summary of how the income effect and substitution effect of a price change. When the price decreases, consumer purchasing power increases. The income effect is an increase. If it's a normal good, decrease if it's an inferior good. The substitution effect causes the opportunity cost of consuming the good to decrease when the price decreases, which causes the quantity of the good demanded to increase. If the price increases, consumer purchasing power decreases. And it will cause a decrease in the quantity demanded if it's a normal good, and an increase if it's an inferior good. And the substitution effect, when the price increases, the price increase which will cause an increase in the quantity of the good demanded to decrease because of the substitution effect. Where is the demand coming from? Remember the law of demand. We can use 2 observations to observe consumer behavior to trace out your demand curve. Optimal consumption of pizza when the price is $2, 3 slices. Optimal consumption of pizza when it's $1.50. Again, this is a downward sloping demand curve. As price decreases, quantity demanded increases. Again, the law of demand. Each individual has a demand curve for pizza. By adding the individual demand curve for each at each price, we obtain the market demand. So basically, every individual is added to get the market demand. Could you have a demand curve that slopes upward? For a demand curve to slope upward, the good would have to be an inferior good, making it up a very large portion of the consumer's budget, with a greater income effect than substitution effect. So for a long time they couldn't find this, but in a 2006 experiment they revealed that for poor regions in China, decrease in the price of rice led to some very poor people consuming less rice. You would think if they were poor, they would consume more rice as the price went down. But that is actually not the case. They consumed more meat in this situation, even as the price went down. This is an upward sloping demand curve known as a Geffen good. So, why would social influences matter? So, does social influences matter? Remember, there's always the assumption that we act rational, and I just don't believe that's really how we act. In most economic standard models, people are assumed to make choices independently of each other. Sometimes such models are incorrectly predicting consumer behavior by ignoring social aspects of decision making. The utility from drugs, crime, and going bowling depends on whether your friends and neighbors take drugs, commit crimes, and go bowling. Social behavior. Okay. Examples of social influence. Celebrity endorsements. How many people have purchased something because you saw it on TV and a celebrity was using it and you want to be like the celebrity, or you want to feel like the celebrity, or you want to play basketball like the celebrity? Firms use celebrity endorsements regularly. They work. Consumers might believe the celebrity knows more about this than I do, or buying this product, I will become more like the celebrity. I don't know if I'm personally affected by celebrity endorsements, but sometimes a friend will say, not even a celebrity, oh, I use this, you have to try it, oh my gosh, it's so great, blah, 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 blah. And so you think that your friends influence you, right? Network externalities. For some products, the more people that use the product, the more useful it becomes. Imagine Facebook. If no one used Facebook, would it be useful to you? Probably not. But the more and more people that use Facebook, the more useful it becomes to you. The same thing with the cell phone service. If you can't text anybody, texting becomes useless. But the more people that have access to texting, the more useful it becomes. That's a network externality. Network externalities might result in market failure if people become locked into inferior products. For example, the keyboards were designed to be slower than alternatives, but almost all keyboards are now like this special keyboard, which I can't say. Fairness. Okay, so does fairness influence your decision? People like to be treated fairly and prefer to treat each other fairly, even if it's bad for them financially. People tend to tip their servers, even if they never plan to go back to the restaurant. And tips aren't required, but they want to be fair. Businesses learn from this and attempt to appear fair whenever it will cost them profits. Example, the NFL sells Super Bowl tickets between $600 and $1,200 from 2011, but these tickets get resold for much more. Survey reveals that NFL fans would consider it unfair if the NFL raised the ticket price instead of fans believing the current system of randomly distributing tickets to applicants is fairer. The NFL forgoes potential profit to avoid alienating fans. I think that's because ultimately it's not that they avoid potential profit, they avoid the loss of future profits because of alienating fans will cost more than the increase that they can sell those tickets for. So let's talk about gaming theory. So the ultimatum game or the dictator game. In ultimatum game, pairs are given $100. Person A proposes a split of money, say 75 and 25. If B accepts, each gets the money. If B rejects, neither gets the money. Optimal play. B should accept any split. Hence, A should offer very little to B, because if B gets $2, that's better than 0. Actual play. Non-even splits are often rejected, and people anticipate that, and they tend to offer a 50-50 split or something near it rather than 99 and 1, because people will reject it. Rather than taking $1, they want it to be fair. Now, the dictator game is the same, except B cannot reject it. Optimal play. Give B nothing. Actual play. There's still 50-50 splits knowing that they can't reject it. So, why is this? Because economists believe that we value fairness. The results of these laboratory games suggest that people strongly value fairness. However, it may be the perception of fairness that people value. Subjects might be concerned about the experimenter, or other subjects are thinking they were selfish if they kept a large portion. So it's the perception of fairness, not actually being fair. When subjects are asked to perform tasks to earn money, they are more likely to keep as much as they believe they earned. Conclusion. Care needs to be taken when interpreting artificial laboratory experiments. So let's talk about fuel surcharges. Oil prices rose in 2008, and the idea is that people feel if there's a rise in the cost, they feel it's fair for the business to pass on and for the price to go up. But if there's not a rise in the cost, they don't believe it's fair, so then they're likely to be more upset about it. In 2011, demand for air travel was starting to rise. This would suggest that prices would also rise, but decrease in the price of oil allowed supply to expand. So basically, the price didn't rise because the decrease in the price of oil allowed more flights, so therefore the cost per flight went down, and therefore the price remained the same as demand went up. The unnecessary fuel surcharges remained as companies would not want to explain why prices didn't fall when fuel surcharges were removed. Describe the behavioral economic approach to understanding decision-making. Behavioral economics. In recent years, some economists have started to study situations in which people do not appear to behave rationally. This happens all the time. I give clients information about taxes or about certain situations or about housing, and they don't make rational decisions because their behaviors are influencing them. 3 common mistakes made by consumers. 1. Taking into account monetary costs, like actual monetary costs, but ignoring non-monetary costs. Failing to ignore sunk costs and being unrealistic about their own future behavior. Okay, number 1. How do people ignore non-monetary costs? People often treat monetary and non-monetary costs very different, even though they are both opportunity costs. Example, people who won the NFL lottery for Super Bowl tickets were asked the following 2 questions. If you had not won the lottery, and this is random, which means the ticket cost between $300 and $400 or something like that, would you be willing to spend $3,000 for this ticket? If after winning the lottery, someone offered you $3,000 for the ticket, would you have sold it? So, on the number 1, they would not have paid the $3,000, but after they get the ticket, they're not willing to sell it for $3,000. That's irrational. People did not answer the question similarly. Far from it. 94% said they would not have paid $3,000 for the ticket, but 92% said that they would not sell it for $3,000 either. Why? Because people value things that they already have. This is called the endowment effect. The endowment effect refers to the tendency of people to be unwilling to sell a good they already own, even if they're offered a price that is greater than the price they would be willing to pay for the good if they didn't already own it. In simpler terms, people do not like losing what they have. They consider losing an object to hurt them more than gaining a similar object would help them. Therefore, this is irrational behavior by economic standards. A sunk cost. So number 2, failing to ignore sunk cost. A sunk cost is something that has already been paid and cannot be recovered. Therefore, it should not really be taken into consideration when making decisions about the future, but people do it all the time. Once you have paid money and can't get it back, you should ignore that for all future decisions, but people allow past costs to influence future decisions. NFL teams persist with their first-round draft pick for quarterbacks much longer than later-round picks with similar performance because they have quote-unquote paid more for the first-rounder. Admitting mistakes and moving on is crucial, but people find it often difficult to do that. What about being unrealistic about future behavior? I think about this as also like, oh, but I'm going to eat this today because I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, and then people never go to the gym tomorrow. People often make decisions that are inconsistent with their long-run intentions. For example, in 2010, 69% of smokers reported they wanted to quit, and 52% attempted to quit, but despite their intentions, few actually quit. They found it hard to control their future behavior. Have you ever intended to quit a bad behavior or start a new one and failed? Like, I'm going to start the gym tomorrow. You likely believed that you would be able to carry through on your intentions. Art Stephen Lambert found himself getting distracted while on his computer by emails and random web surfing. While he intended to work hard, he found that himself for an hour later disagreed with those intentions. He created an app called Self-Control that blocked access to the email and web for a predetermined period. Unsurprisingly, his productivity increased substantially. So common misconceptions to avoid. Economists do not assume people maximize utility, but they commonly assume that people behave as if they're going to maximize their utility. To maximize utility, don't seek to equalize the utility gained from each unit, but instead from each dollar spent. Take care interpreting economic experiments. The lessons sometimes don't carry over to real worlds. And this is the appendix. So that's where we're going to end for the overview of consumer behavior.